So let's get started. So I'd like to welcome everyone to today's presentation on influencer marketing in the age of AI. I guess to kick things off, I'll introduce myself. I'm Janine Cross, EVP of Activation here at Harmland. And before we get into all the fantastic content we have created for you today, I did want to go over a few quick housekeeping items for you. So first, we do have less than an hour worth of content, so we will get you promptly and on time to your next meeting. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. We will be providing the slides and the recording of this session after, so you can dig in, answer any questions, go a little deeper. And then we also encourage you to put any key questions in the chat and the Q&A, really so we can kind of get a sense of some of what you're looking to hear more about. And our goal here will be to follow up with each of you individually after the presentation. That way we can get into more specifics. We can really address what you need for your brand and other needs you have. And so we'll go a little deeper. So with that, let's get into the content. So we're living in a moment where AI is reshaping almost everything in marketing and really well beyond marketing, right? But as everything becomes faster and smarter and more automated, one thing is becoming even more valuable and harder to replicate, and that is authenticity. Because in a crowded, algorithm-driven world, authenticity is what really makes people stop scrolling. It's what builds trust, and ultimately trust is still the most valuable currency we have with consumers. We need to earn it and protect it. So that tension between AI and authenticity, between scale and human connection, that's really what we're going to be exploring today in today's presentation. We'll look at how this human influence drives impact across the board, from consumer experience to brand, to how it strengthens your broader media mix, and ultimately how your message shows up and resonates with consumers. So I'm excited to introduce our presenters for today. We have Molly Dronson, who's our Director of Influencer, who will take you through really the value of influencers to the consumer. We have Kate Egan, an Associate Director on the influencer team, who will dive in even more about influencers' value to your overall media and marketing mix. Tara Palia, Senior Strategist, will dive into UGC and using those assets and that performance it can bring beyond just your influencer campaigns into your other media. And lastly, we have Brad Rizza, VP of Social and Influencer, who's really going to go further into creative algorithms, into messaging, and really that balance of AI and authenticity, and how we're really going to see the world change in the coming years, and how that message mix is really going to be evolving. So with that, I'll pass you over to Molly to get us started.
When we talk about the value of influencer marketing, we have to start where it actually begins, with the person on the other side of the screen. And what we know is that consumers aren't just looking for a product recommendation, they're looking for someone they trust. Influencers build communities rooted in who they are, not just what they post, and that's a completely different relationship than a brand ad. Influencer marketing is built on reliability, on showing up consistently, and on feeling known. And this isn't a generational thing. Influencer marketing spans every platform, every niche, and every demographic. It's not just limited to Gen Z, it's shaping how all audiences are discovering and deciding. So let's make this real for a second. You have a big decision to make, whether that's planning a trip, renovating a room in your home, or looking to make a big purchase. So where do you go? A lot of us start with AI, and honestly, that's not a bad instinct. But these LLMs are pattern recognizers. They're pulling from what's already out there, synthesizing information. It can point you in the right direction, but it doesn't know you, your tastes, or how you really feel about certain things. So most of us at some point turn to someone we actually trust. This can be a friend, a family member, or for a lot of people, someone we follow online. Someone who thinks like them, has been where they're going, and has built a whole community of people who feel the same way. That's the opening that influencers fill, and it's one that no algorithm can replicate. So AI has become a really powerful starting tool for consumers. It's helping people quickly narrow their options, whether that's comparing products, exploring categories, or getting quick recommendations or price information. But what's important is that AI is acting as a filter, not the final decision maker. It's fast and efficient, but it's also inherently impersonal. And that's where a trust gap is created. Even as people use AI to research, they're not fully trusting it to make that final call. In fact, only about 20% of consumers fully trust AI to make a decision for them. So what happens next? What is that next step in helping to make that final decision? They turn to a human voice, someone they actually trust. Again, this could be a creator, a review, a friend, or a community. That human reassurance is what ultimately gives them the confidence to move forward. And that's exactly where influencers play a critical role, bridging that gap between discovery and decision. So, trust today isn't driven by expertise alone, it's driven by relatability. Consumers don't trust people just because they're labeled as experts. They trust people who feel real, who sound like them, and who share authentic life experiences. That's why influencer marketing is so powerful. People aren't following creators because they're the most qualified in any given field. They're following them because they feel like a strong connection and trust their opinions. Creators are inviting audiences into their lives. They share honest opinions and build that trust over time. And that trust is what makes recommendations so impactful. At the end of the day, it's not about the most polished messaging or being the best of the best. It's about those authentic, relatable experiences that resonate and drive action. So, at the core of influencer marketing is something really simple but really powerful. People don't follow creators because they need something, they follow them because they connect with them. Creators make their audiences feel seen, understood, and part of something bigger, and that's what builds that real loyalty. Creators are, sorry, there are a few key dynamics at play here. First, we have the friend effect. So followers develop are essentially one-sided relationships with creators, but they feel very real and personal. 63% of adults aged 18 to 29 feel emotionally attached to at least one online personality. So over time, these creators are becoming a familiar, trusted voices in their daily lives. Second, it's advice, not advertising. When a creator is recommending something, it doesn't feel like a brand message. It feels like a suggestion from a friend, and that fundamentally changes how the message is received. And lastly, authenticity drives action. Because that trust already exists, creator content doesn't just engage, it converts. So it turns that connection into measurable actions, whether that's clicks, engagement, or brand affinity. This idea of relatability is what is ultimately driving performance. We're seeing that 86% of consumers have made a purchase inspired by an influencer, and 76% actually prefer influencer content over traditional brand ads. This is a huge shift in how people are engaging with brands. And when you look at why people trust certain creators, it's not about follower count or production quality. It's about alignment. Do they share my values? Do they feel authentic, even in sponsored content? Do they fit into my world? Things like demographics and follower count matter, but they've become secondary to trust and relatability. So when we think about influencer strategy, it's not just about reach or who has the most followers. It's about finding the right voice that's genuinely resonating with your audience, because that's what's driving that connection and action. One of the biggest misconceptions is that influencer marketing is only relevant for Gen Z, but the data is telling a different story. Platforms like YouTube and Facebook actually have strong cross-generational reach, while even platforms that typically skew younger, like TikTok and Instagram, still see meaningful engagement from 30 to 49 and even 50 to 64 audiences. What this shows is that this social engagement and by extension, influencer impact, these are the platforms where influencers are sharing their content and engaging with audiences, is not just confined to one demographic. It spans generations, behaviors, and different life stages. So when we think about influencer strategy, it's not just about reaching younger audiences, it's about meeting all audiences where they already are with the voices they trust on all of these different platforms. So as we bring this all together, we're really looking at two forces shaping the landscape right now. On one side, we have AI driving that scale, efficiency, and faster content production than ever before. But with that, we're also seeing increasing skepticism and a lack of trust in this sort of automated messaging. And then on the other side, we have that human advantage. Trust, voice, and authenticity are what are ultimately driving performance. Creators are bringing that level of relatability and perspective with them that brands and AI can't replicate. They're translating brand messaging into something that's real, personal, and actionable that is resonating with their audiences. And that's why influencer marketing continues to be so powerful. It's not just about the content, it's about the connection. So as we move into how influencer fits into your broader media mix, that human connection becomes a key lever, not just for engagement, but for driving real business outcomes. So with that foundation around trust, authenticity, and the role creators play, I'm going to pass it over to Kate to walk through how influencer comes to life within the broader media mix.
So influencer marketing is how modern consumers discover, evaluate, and buy. So let's break down what that means for brands and how it fits in your media mix. The rise of influencer marketing is rooted in something that traditional media has kind of struggled to maintain, and that's that genuine peer level trust. So today, influencer marketing delivers one-to-many reach at broadcast scale for audiences that skip the ads. Creators now influence every stage of the purchase funnel. With precise boosting and platform native commerce, influencer marketing has evolved from a top of funnel awareness tactic to a full funnel growth engine. And when that's grounded in a clear framework that aligns goals to metrics while helping guide creator selection and content, influencer investment becomes impactful, measurable, and defensible in terms of ROI. Now, if there's one thing that AI can't fake, it's real human connection. And that's exactly what audiences are craving right now. Everyone is getting really great at spotting things that feel off. If something's overly manufactured, everyone's going to scroll right past it. And what stops the scroll is honesty and emotional resonance from real people that are relatable. And this is where creators win by bringing storytelling, personality, and nuance that still requires a human touch. Creator marketing remains one of the few spaces where unscripted creativity can really break through and make an impact. When you pair that with trust, creators become powerful distribution engines, with some reaching audiences that rival primetime viewership. So how did we get here? In the early 2000s, the first wave of digital influencers emerged through blogging, particularly mommy bloggers who were building tight-knit, trust-driven communities, and brands quickly took notice. So by the mid-2000s, platforms like YouTube enabled creators to really scale those audiences, and sponsorships became more formalized as content creators really started to enter the mainstream. Instagram's launch in 2010 transformed the space entirely. Quick-hitting visual storytelling took off, and influencers in categories mainly like fashion, food, and fitness were able to start turning content creation into full-time careers. And by 2016, features like stories and swipe up links changed the game, shifting usage to real-time viewing, allowing for seamless action pathways, and all the while TikTok was still on the rise, soon to reshape content consumption entirely, as I'm sure many of us on this call are aware. So by 2019, the word influencer was officially recognized in the dictionary, and the market had grown to 8 billion. COVID, of course, accelerated content consumption, and the content itself is now instant, interactive, and built to drive action. Today, we're looking at a creator economy that's projected to hit nearly 70 billion by 2028. So creators today exist across virtually every single interest, identity, and passion, each with highly engaged, loyal audiences. But as Molly mentioned, people don't only follow categories, they follow people. It's really about relatability. Audiences trust creators who reflect their own lifestyles, values, and experiences. This is exactly why a lot of brands are shifting away from a big name mindset when it comes to creator and influencer marketing, and shifting towards smaller creators that are highly engaged with their audiences are highly engaged with them, and their everyday voices. They drive strong engagement and often more authentic connections, which essentially leads to more meaningful results. So of course, as the industry has matured, so have campaign objectives. Awareness and reach remain foundational and probably always will for influencer marketing, but brands are increasingly relying on creators for mid and lower funnel goals, like strengthening brand perception, driving consideration, and ultimately generating sales and leads. As a result, influencer marketing is no longer confined to just one part of the funnel, and neither is its budget. So investment is becoming more flexible, reflecting its broader impact. What's really interesting is seeing how influencer content shows up across the entire consumer journey, with discovery, evaluation, and purchase often all happening in the same place. So consumers discover brands through creators that they already follow and trust. They evaluate through in-depth tutorials, reviews, and even social proof in the comments from other users, other followers. And they're led to confidently convert right then and there through links, through storefronts, and even in the comment section with influencers answering questions directly and linking them to the exact product. But it doesn't even stop there, because post-purchase creators continue to play a key role in driving loyalty, reinforcing purchase decisions, and inspiring buyers to share their own experiences, create their own content, fueling ongoing brand exposure. Now, if anyone has recently tuned into Coachella or really any other event of mass scale, you've probably seen how creators are increasingly shaping culture, relevance, and trust, becoming central to modern media strategies. So today, half of advertisers consider creator marketing a must-buy, and it's right up there with paid social and search. So most forward-thinking brands are not treating influencer marketing as an add-on anymore. They're building it into their media mix from the very start. And the rise of in-platform shopping has fundamentally changed how people purchase. Influencers are now content creators, educators, and sales drivers all at once. And consumers don't even need to leave the platform to do their product research or complete their purchase. The entire customer journey to purchase happens all in one place. 86% of consumers search for products on social media before making a purchase, and 67% purchase directly on platform at least once a month. When you map this out in a media plan, influencer content can show up everywhere. Many of you are familiar with Harmelin's plan architecture shown here, so let's see where influencer fits. At the awareness stage, it lives as organic, in-feed content. In consideration, it can drive deeper engagement through stories and traffic-driving tactics. And then at conversion, it scales through paid social boosting and performance-driven tactics like affiliate links. So it's no longer siloed, it is fully integrated. Now, your highest performing paid media might already exist. You just need to boost it. Paid social boosting extends the reach and frequency of creator content, ensuring that it reaches an even broader, more highly targeted audience. Another engagement driving tactic comes through collaboration posts. Brands and creators can co-publish content, increasing visibility and building credibility at the same time. So once you start layering all of these tactics together, the big question, of course, becomes, how do you actually measure success across everything? That's where a lot of brands get stuck. Creator marketing is continuing to grow quickly, but measurement is still a top challenge for many brands. The most successful programs address this by building measurement in from the start, not as an afterthought. So locking in KPIs as early as possible to help design the campaign with correct and, most importantly, unchanging goals in mind. Too often, campaigns are briefed for awareness, but end up being evaluated on sales, which creates a misalignment and a confusion on, was the campaign even successful? So defining KPIs upfront helps ensure that the creators, the messaging, and measurement are all working together toward the same goal. And I would be remiss, of course, to not mention the ever-changing algorithm and measurement inconsistencies that can make cross-channel comparison a little unreliable. So in this landscape, it's really important not to over-rely on platform metrics and instead build internal benchmarks so that you can accurately measure performance over time. Now, what does this look like in practice? For a recent Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuit campaign that we activated through our partnership with the Krusteaz Company, we went in with both awareness and sales goals from the start. So we aligned on messaging and measurement from the outset, working with our creators to position Cheddar Bay biscuit mix as a versatile pantry staple rather than just a side dish. Now, because strategy and measurement were aligned up front, we saw impacts on both fronts. We saw a 40% lift in sales and a huge jump in engagement rate. And this is exactly why having a clear measurement framework from the start isn't optional. It's what makes results like this possible. So that framework really comes down to just a few things, starting with clear goals defined across the funnel, even before creators are briefed. It also requires a holistic view of performance, so combining quantitative metrics like impressions and click-through rate with qualitative signals like sentiment and content quality. Standardization, of course, is key. Align teams and partners on consistent definitions of success from the start. And most importantly, measurement should be integrated from day one to help guide strategy and not just evaluate it. So we've reviewed what a strong measurement framework might look like. Let's get clear on exactly which metrics matter where. With upper funnel awareness and reach goals, you'll measure impressions, views, and incorporate brand lift studies where possible. For mid-funnel, prioritize engagement and consideration. So tracking interactions, clicks, video completion rates, and potentially utilizing custom audience builds to retarget users who've already engaged with your brand. And at the lower funnel, drive conversion through boosted conversion campaigns, promo codes, and add-on affiliate programs, measuring outcomes like CPA, purchases, and creator attributed revenue. So now that we've covered how influencer marketing really drives full funnel impact, I'll pass it over to Brad to talk about how it can actively enhance and amplify your existing media investments.
Great, thank you, Kate. So this is a really exciting time to be working at the convergence of digital media efforts and the creator economy, which is where this group spends our day-to-day. And Kate just left us off here on how to build a framework to measure if your influencer campaigns meant to close that trust gap are generating brand value, sessions, new customers, sales. And in this section, we want to focus on how leveraging authentic content can help drive measurable improvement of your existing media campaigns. In other words, how can we use authentic content to improve what you're already doing? We're really at an inflection point in both how the AI algorithms analyze and deliver creative, but also what users expect and what works with them. So we'll, in this section, cover the necessity of using this type of content across your machine learning auction-based platforms. And then Tara will define what UGC content is, how it works, and how it differentiates from paid influencer content. Okay, so when we talk about performance enhancement with authentic content, we mean that it can and should be leveraged across your entire paid digital ecosystem. These platforms are really looking for this type of content. They want it. And it can be hard to predict how the algorithms are going to perform, especially for lower funnel media. So really, we want to feed them and see what works. And we will get into some examples of effectiveness. But before we do that, let's address why, from a technical standpoint, we are seeing such positive results with paid media campaigns when we're using this type of authentic content. All right, so we have 2 auction slides to share. This is the 2 slides are going to be based on the Meta auction, but a lot of the paid media platforms are using a very similar auction. This first slide simplifies things. It tells us basically that the AI that governs ad delivery for these platforms are incentivized to prioritize user value, as in trying to predict if people on the platform will like the ads, because they want users to be exposed to ads that relate to them, that are meaningful to them, so they have a good experience on the platform. Now, this next slide breaks it down a little further. It's a lot going on, but the key point here is that as the AIs that govern paid media algorithms get smarter, they do more for you. They help with your bidding, they help with targeting, they automate delivery. So creative is not only the main lever that we have in our control to impact performance, it's also the most important factor left in achieving direct response success. And that's because strong creative gets delivered to users cheaper, and you're paying less for impressions that are going to users that are already more likely to engage. So what are the 3 main things that we can do to ensure we're feeding the systems? I think the ideas to keep in mind here are going to be monitoring fatigue, always focusing on differentiation, and then infusing creator content. So let's touch on these one by one. We all are probably pretty familiar with creative fatigue because it makes intuitive sense to us as users. As a consumer and users, we all ignore that ad that we've seen 4 or 5 times. We just, scroll past it. In upper funnel campaigns, we can limit frequency, but we can't do that on most platforms in some mid and all lower funnel campaigns. So what are some options we have to address frequency? One way to address this is to ensure that you're constantly differentiating your content. And we don't mean some with a logo, some without. We don't mean let's change the copy slightly or change the colors. We're talking about differentiating radically different messaging and content types across the board. And you have some examples here. And this also includes using all creative types all the time. So a meta, for example, that means statics, videos, and carousels, because remember, ad platforms like Meta only deliver the creative type and the placement, like an Instagram Reel, to each user in the placement they traditionally interact with. So if you don't have that placement, that creative type in the mix, some users are going to be ignored. So, okay, this is a lot to manage, right? We have to differentiate all of our content. We have to have all these different placements, all these different sizes. Is there some sort of hack that we can leverage here? So for us, what we've seen is the answer is yes. In Meta and all these other platforms agree. So Meta for years used this Power 5 system, where it's 5 key areas of emphasis to have your best campaign performance. And they recently rebranded it to the Performance 5. And one thing that they added in there is leveraging creator content. This is one of the 5 most important things that Meta says you should be doing for your campaigns. And this doesn't mean just running influencer campaigns, because that will absolutely help, but it really means adding creator or authentic content into your existing campaigns. Now, why, right? It's because the AI that we just looked at and users favor them. So consider, how are you connecting and cultivating via social and programmatic? You do it by building trust, showcasing brand value and brand attributes through this type of owned creative. Now, obviously, we think about using paid for acquisition, but consider some of the long tail benefits of using and having this content. This type of authentic content can also be a potential retention tool for your best customers. It can be used in owned channels. It can be an urgency nudge for those in the consideration stage. It can help build up your first party audience pools, because when you have more users engaging with a piece of content, they're clicking and sharing it. Those are signals that you can use to add into a future campaign. So to summarize, one way to address fatigue is to add differentiation. One way to improve differentiation is to add creator content. And then you need to differentiate that. And so some examples here, because the AI that governs these platforms and users are looking for different techniques, like you can see here. So with that, I will pass it to Tara to explain a bit more about what we really mean when we talk about creator content, and how your best campaigns that use your best creative will bring in your best customers.
Thanks, Brad. So we talk about creator content, but it's important to define what we mean by creator content, because influencer content and UGC often get used interchangeably, but they're actually very different. So in general, we have, creator content like photos, videos, and reviews made by creators or consumers, not the brand. And then within that, we have 2 main types. So we have influencer content, where we're working with creators to reach their audience that aligns with our target market. And then there's user-generated content, or UGC, where we work with creators to produce content for media use. They may or may not have a following, but it doesn't really matter, because the content's not going live. We're just working with them to get that content. So the simplest way to think about it is influencer equals distribution and UGC equals performance. And this shift is why traditional creative content isn't working like it used to. So automation is taking over a lot in media buying, like bidding, targeting, and optimization, which makes creative the main differentiator. And in the fast-moving landscape, we're seeing a few creative challenges. So first, as we mentioned, the scroll past risk. It's polished, brand-forward ads are easy for consumers to instantly skip. Then we're seeing creative fatigue. The same assets run too long, performance plateaus, and then they quickly fall behind social best practices. Third, a creative access gap. So brands simply don't have enough fresh assets to support the pace that platforms now demand. And then lastly, rising media costs. So CPMs keep increasing, which puts more pressure on every creative asset to perform. So bottom line is that traditional creative isn't working like it used to, and that's where UGC comes in. So UGC helps with those 4 challenges because it's authentic, platform native, which means it blends in the feed instead of getting filtered out by the scroll. It scales across every channel. So, you don't have to just use it for paid social. You can use it for display, email, website, and blog. It's also really quick to produce. And then lastly, it also drives measurable performance. So UGC consistently drives stronger performance across the board. For brand trust, 93% of marketers say UGC outperforms brand content. For engagement and conversions, UGC drives 6 times higher engagement and 29% higher conversions than brand content. For cost efficiency, UGC not only costs less to produce than working with influencers and creative agencies, but it also delivers up to 4 times higher click-through rates at a 50% lower cost per click. So overall, UGC outperforms brand creative in performance metrics and then also across the funnel. Here are some of our client results showing that Meta consistently favored UGC and how it performed across every stage of the funnel. So in an awareness campaign for a smart home tech brand, we saw that UGC drove 96% of total impressions. In a traffic campaign for a grocery retailer, we saw Meta again favored UGC, which drove 92% of all engagements, and then also delivered 11% higher engagement than brand creative. And then lastly, in a leads campaign for an education client, we saw that UGC delivered a 34% lower cost per lead than brand ads. So whether it was awareness, consideration, or conversion, UGC consistently outperformed traditional brand creative. And then to go a little deeper, here's a case study where we tested whether UGC could drive higher engagement and more efficient lead generation compared to brand creative. So we ran an A/B test. We had 2 types of creative. We had that polished brand forward creative, and then we also had UGC, which was, more authentic and story driven. And the results were clear. UGC drove 82% of all leads, while also delivering a significantly lower cost per lead. So the key takeaway here is UGC doesn't just capture attention, it turns it into real results. And the question now becomes, how are top performing brands actually making this work? So the brands winning today aren't choosing between UGC and brand content. They're using both. Brand content, drives reach and awareness through that polished, high production creative. And then we have UGC that drives conversion through authenticity and real human storytelling. And then together, as we've seen in the data, Meta reports that partnership ads combined with brand ads have a 99% probability of outperforming brand ads. So in this AI-powered world, it's not about choosing between UGC and brand content. It's about using both together to actually drive those results. Now I'll pass it back to Brad to discuss creative today and tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Tara. Yeah, it's truly been incredible to see some of the results when we are combining those brand assets with the UGC content and running them together. So before we go to Molly to wrap us up, let's do a quick double click into the importance of authentic content to your message. And so in this section, we'll review the creative spectrum available to us, like what's out there, what do we have to choose from? And it's going to be interesting to touch on that even in influencer and creator marketing, AI tools in that industry are on the rise. And then we'll take a quick look at the ideal creative mix today and tomorrow. Okay, so when you think about the spectrum of creative types available to you, you can think about the most authentic being from or about real people, the content we've been speaking about. Then we have brand assets, sometimes we call BAU, business as usual ads. DCO, which is available on most platforms, right? That means creative changing real time based on factors like the weather or your geo or some product catalog retargeting. And then you have Gen AI creative. And we'll get a little bit more into that in a minute, but just to give an example, you may know that in the last 2 years, the Coca-Cola holiday polar bear TV commercials, those are all AI generated, but they had 100 plus people working on them. So we'll talk a little more about Gen AI creative, but you can leverage AI for variations, for ideation, but you also need more people now the human in the loop, if you will, to review and prompt. So you might find it interesting on this next slide here that nearly half of marketers are using AI to edit and personalize influencer content, and a third is using it to generate synthetic content. Now, these results come from the IAB 2025 Creator Economy Ad Spend Strategy Report. And it's a little ironic that the channel that marketers can use to bridge that trust gap is now becoming automated. And as these tools are improving, there are more opportunities to use AI to find your creators, to draft your briefs, to review their content. But if you're using AI to source your creators and write your briefs and review your content, you might not have the human in the loop at the right spot. And you also might be missing a key piece, which is taste. You've not been able to automate that yet. And you might be missing out leveraging the expertise of those who know your brand, they know your voice, and they have those relationships that can look beyond the numbers of followers and actually have be able to see what works across verticals and inform who to select and who to work with and who to prompt and how to write briefs. So in that same survey, almost all brands expressed concern that we might be moving too quickly here, and that the most important part of this and any process that can be made more efficient with AI is to keep that human in the loop. And doing this includes building a review and approval process so the right stakeholders are involved. For most organizations, 2026 should be the year of the pilot. These charts here show a general recommendation for creative mix on paid media this year and next. Next year, brand content might be less than half of the assets being run on some platforms. And you can see Gen AI listed here. Right now, AI systems do not produce work at the level you'd want to push out to the public without intense human intervention. But it's getting better, right? This is exponential growth. Look at Nano Banana for images, Runway for video, Adobe Firefly. We've come a long way from people with 7 fingers. And that means you have time to consider how to make that investment in authentic content and create proof points. You have time to drive interest within your org and on your team to build process and workflow. So our recommendation is consider now to make that investment in authenticity and trust, because if you make that mindset shift, the value will go beyond influencer campaigns. It goes beyond paid media campaigns. It goes beyond owned. It will materially impact your relationship with your customers. So now I'll pass it to Molly for some closing thoughts.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with the core truth that runs through everything we've covered today. Authenticity wins, and that holds across every dimension of your marketing. So from a consumer standpoint, the unique power of influencer is rooted in trust, in real creator voices, and that genuine human connection that's only becoming more valuable as AI-generated content is flooding the space. For your brand, influencer isn't just a one-off tactic. It's a scalable, full-funnel solution that fits within your broader plan architecture. When it comes to your other media, creator content doesn't just have to live on social. It strengthens and elevates your other channels by bringing in that relatable, performance-driven creative that cuts through the rest. And finally, your message itself. AI-generated creative hasn't fully earned consumer trust yet. Brands that lean into real creators rather than synthetic content are going to have a meaningful edge in credibility and connection. So where do we go from here? We've identified 3 areas where we can start adding value for you right away. First, with influencer, we can develop tailored influencer concepts and thought starters specific to your category and build out a sample roster of relevant creators who fit your brand. For UGC, we can audit your existing paid social campaigns and identify any ads that are underperforming or hitting fatigue. This is a really quick and easy way to find out where fresh creator content can make an immediate impact. And then for affiliate, we can take a close look at how your competitors are leveraging affiliate and benchmark those commission structures so you know exactly where the opportunity is. So if you're interested in these new opportunities and want to talk to us about them, these are areas where we can get started right away. If you're a current client, you can reach out to your client lead. And if we haven't partnered together yet, you can send a note to mediatrends@harmland.com. We'll be sure to get back to all of these inquiries as well as answers to any of the questions that were left in the chat today. And with that, we would like to thank you all for joining. We're so excited for the possibilities here, and we'll give you a few minutes back in your day. Thanks, everyone.